Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started then. Welcome to the White House. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Kareem Dale, and I am Special Assistant to the President for Disability Policy here at the White House. I coordinate all of the work we do on administration, disability policy, and also outreach out of the Office of Public Engagement, as well as the Domestic Policy Council. So thanks to you all for joining us here today, and for everybody who is watching online via live stream. We certainly appreciate it. We're very excited about this event. So this is the STEM Champions of Change at the White House: science, technology, engineering, and math. And so I am going to make some brief opening remarks, and then we're going to have another speaker, and then we're going to have a panel on employment, a panel on education with each of our groups of champions of change, and then we'll have some closing remarks, and we will depart. So this is an effort that when we first started talking about champions of change and what we might do related to disability, I think our administration, we've done a lot of work as it relates to disability policy and as it relates to outreach, whether it be on employment, education, health care, and all of the president's successes as it relates to people with disabilities, civil rights, independent living. We've made a lot of progress. And I've always said to our team, working across the agencies, that one of the areas that I think that we need to make more progress on is STEM for people with disabilities. We know that when people with disabilities have an equal opportunity and the playing field is level, they will achieve in STEM. And there's nothing that we can't do as people with disabilities when given that equal opportunity. So I really thought it was important that we highlight our champions of change, and that we highlight people in this arena that are starting businesses, that are breaking scientific ground, that are doing great things in technology, in math, and all of these areas, and really creating a new fabric of our society. You've heard the president talk about the jobs of the future are going to be in STEM. And so people with disabilities need to have equal access to that STEM, and then be able to contribute to all of the things that America is doing in our economy and in the education field. So we're excited. And first, let me thank our partners at the Department of Education. Alexa Posney and the OSERS team has been phenomenal. I don't know if Melody Musgrove is here, Sue Swinson, Charlie Lakin, all of the team at the Department of Education has been phenomenal. I also want to thank our team at the Department of Labor, Kathy Martinez, who couldn't be here today, Rhonda Bechu, Dylan Orr, and the entire team at ODEP have just been phenomenal in partnering with us on this event, and really have put in a lot of man and woman hours to help us make sure this is a success, so we thank those agencies. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is introduce the champions, and then I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. I'm having a little technology malfunction here, which is really good at a STEM event. But give me one second, and we're going to introduce all of our champions. All right, so here we go. 1 second. Okay, so let's start with, I'm going to do these in mostly alphabetical order, so if our champions can just raise their hand when you get acknowledged. Sina Barham, computer science graduate student at the North Carolina State University. Sina?
Thanks.
And maybe we'll actually just hold applause to the end, I'm sure, so we can have time. John Boyer, President and CEO of AbilitySoft. Ralph Braun, who could not be with us here today, but he's CEO of the Braun Corporation, working to provide innovative solutions in the areas of automobiles and scooters and transportation for people with disabilities. Maria Samini, Assistant Director, somebody went to clap for Maria, Assistant Director for Prevention and Program Evaluation at the University of Albany. Maria? Steve Jacobs, President and CEO of Ideal Group. Dmitry Kaniszewski, and I butchered that name, so sorry, Dmitry. Research staff at the IBM T.J. Watson Research Center. George Kirscher, a legend in his own right, for sure, in our community. Secretary General of the DAISY Consortium and also President of the International Forum. Rafael San Miguel, who is a scientist at Coca-Cola Company. Rafael. Christine Reach, who is Director of Research and Evaluation at the Museum of Science in Boston. David Rose, who's the president and co-founder of CAST. David could not be with us here today. He's actually up talking to Sesame Street today about making sure that it's universally designed. So he's on the mission today, so he sends his best. Jenny Stern, who is the founder of the Entry Point program at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, hiring people or placing people with disabilities in STEM internships. Joseph Sullivan, who couldn't be with us here today, president of Duxbury Systems, working on Braille technology. And Nasrin Tai, who is a biochemistry graduate student at University of North Texas. And Henry Wedler, who is an organic chemistry student, graduate student at the University of California at Davis. And those are our champions, so let's give them a round of applause. Okay, so let me get to our first speaker. Our first speaker is the Chief Technology Officer for the administration. Many of you all probably know Anish Chopra, who we work with quite a bit, who I work with quite a bit on many, many technology initiatives for people with disabilities over the first few years of the administration. Anish was fantastic, and we've got a new great CTO, Todd Parks, who is going to be joining us today to make some remarks, and we're all looking forward to working with Todd on accessible technology. So with that, Todd Parks.
Hello. How is everybody doing? Okay. Okay, sure. Okay. Do you want me to hold up until folks are up stage? Sure. Okay, fantastic.
Sarah, y'all gonna come this way?
They weren't supposed to be kicking me at first, but it's going home.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry. Oh, actually.
Just wait 1 second.
Fantastic. All right. Well, it's truly wonderful to be here with y'all today on such a momentous occasion. And I know that what y'all really want to get to is the panel discussions. So I will make my remarks very, very brief. But it's an enormous, enormous joy to be here to celebrate these truly remarkable American innovators who've done so much to unleash the power of STEM for people with disabilities and the betterment of the country as a whole. On the president's bookcase in the Oval Office is one of the original patent models of Samuel Morse's telegraph. And one of the things he's fond of saying is a big part of what makes America so great is our inventiveness. And that's exactly what we are celebrating here today, an absolutely stunning array of accomplishments and inventions that have made the country a much better place. The core part of my job as US CTO, the part that I'm really, really excited about, is to function as the president's tech entrepreneur residence and focus on how to continually improve how we can unleash the power of data, tech, and innovation to improve the well-being of the American people. And in this work, as U.S. CTO, which I've been doing for about 6 weeks now, and in the prior role that I did, which was very similar, as tech entrepreneur in residence and CTO at HHS, and in my prior life, which is really most of my professional life, being a technology entrepreneur, I actually discovered that there was one thing that truly differentiated the best entrepreneurs and the best innovators from the merely good. What really separated the very best inventors from the rest. And that was the following. They were not in it for the stock options. They were not in it for the glowing write-up in Forbes magazine or Wired or Newsweek. They were in it. They were in entrepreneurship, in invention, in innovation, because they couldn't stand the idea of the world not having what they were building. It's called mission orientation. And this mission orientation, empirically, based on data, which I'm really obsessed about, empirically, that's what separates the very best inventors, the very best entrepreneurs, the very best innovators from the rest. And I think that as you see the champions of change, as you hear about, as you understand what they have done. I was actually going through the roster of the champions this morning. You're just stunned by the enormity of what this amazing group of innovators have accomplished to really unlock the power of STEM for and by people with disabilities, solutions that are incredibly ingenious, like to the point where I laugh out loud as I read them with joy. They're so exciting, so creative, so powerful, that it has advanced the well-being of Americans in so many ways, it's hard to really even describe it all. And you can feel the passion of these individuals on stage, and as you hear about their work, this unbridled joy of invention, this mission orientation that must have powered them through many moments of discouragement and depression, which are part of every great entrepreneurial journey, every great inventive journey, to get to the point where they built something, they released something, they did something that has added so much value to so many lives, and for which we are incredibly grateful as a nation. And I think that if we have one ask, one small ask, it's to not be done yet. Don't be done yet. The country has so many challenges, so many opportunities in the realms of education, energy, healthcare and public health, safety, economic growth, that we need all hands on deck. We need our best innovators to keep at it, keep inventing, keep being driven by your missions to make America better. And so please consider today just another celebratory milestone in your growing careers as innovators. Please don't treat it as an endpoint, which I know none of you will. Keep inventing. Keep that incredibly urgent desire to make the world a better place burning in your heart. And I know that this will just be the beginning, the very beginning, of what history will record as what you contributed to the well-being of the country and the planet. So thank you so much on behalf of the administration for everything that you have done. Thank you even more for what you will do as you continue your remarkable careers as innovators. May God bless you. May the force run strongly in you. And God bless you in the United States of America. Thank you so much again, and many congratulations. Many congratulations.
Okay, our next thing is going to be a panel discussion led by Rhonda, who is with the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the Department of Labor, and it's going to focus on employment related to STEM with our champions on stage. So, Rhonda?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. What I'd like to do first is for you each to introduce yourselves again and tell us a little bit about what brings you here today, what you're being honored for today. Start with you, sir.
I'm Dmitry Konevsky. I'm working at IBM in research speech recognition department. I invented many things that help people with disability. And I think this is many things that brought me here because of this invention.
My name is Raphael Van Mikael. I work for the Coca-Cola Company for 23 years. I'm a flavor and treating scientist. And I volunteer CC science throughout the community. And try to develop a new volunteer program called United States Science Project.
I'm Virginia Stern.
Did they kick you out?
I worked for 35 years for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, initiating the Entry Point program, which continues to provide internships for talented students with disabilities in STEM fields. And almost every one of those students is now in the technical workforce of the nation. I am also a parent and a grandparent, and I know that everyone with a disability who succeeds gets support from their family as well as support from this wonderful technology.
My name is Steve Jacobs. Excuse me. I'm president of Ideal Group and CEO of Apps for Android, which is a company owned by Ideal Group. Ideal Group is a consulting firm and a developer of assistive technologies. And Apps for Android is the world's largest developer of Android accessibility applications. We have somewhere near 5 million installations in 136 countries.
John?
Well, I am John Boyle. I work with Braille transcription software. Right now, our project is Braille Blaster, a complete Braille transcription package. It uses two other pieces of software, the LibLyric and LibLyric UTD-ML libraries. I guess nobody understands that.
Okay, I'd like to just throw a question to the whole group about where did your interest in science and technology come from? How did you become involved in that particular area?
I started my career as mathematician at the Wilson Institute of Science in Israel, where I came after I received a PhD at Moscow University. At the same time, I received award from Knesset in Israel for my invention of tactile device. So this allowed me to work both as mathematician in science, as an inventor of other technologies.
I'm a flavor and treating scientist.
That's weird. I think it's better in particular.
I became with great interest in learning all about food science and crustaceous chemistry and feed modulation chemistry. And I have been involved with the new world of food, and that's how I was involved throughout my cooking program. And I feel so proud of be part of it.
Virginia?
I started as a parent of children with disabilities and without disabilities, and I knew for them to be competitive that they would have to have internships to get employment. And I was honored to have worked all these years with the American Association for Advancement of Science, the country's largest science and engineering cross-disciplinary association, because that would be the way that the internships would be in serious engineering and science.
And I got my beginning with my dad, who was very interested in electronics and engineering, and kind of passed it to me through genes and just doing things together.
Genes are good.
Genes are good. I went to Ohio State University and majored in science and was very lucky to get involved a long time ago in the computer industry when it was just beginning, for end users, that is.
John?
Well, basically, I've always been interested in science. I think I was born with that interest. What interested me in helping others was that after I lost my hearing, I found it almost impossible to get any good science material in Braille. That was back in the 40s, and I've been determined that this isn't going to happen to other people. That's why I'm working on Braille transcription, especially as technical material and also tactile graphics.
It sounds like in each of your cases that it was somewhat inbred to you, but we know that there are a lot of young people with disabilities who may not get into science classes. They might find them to be overly challenging. How do we get those young people involved and interested in science? Anybody?
First, I would like to stress that in America, there is not enough engineers and mathematicians. Therefore, if people with disability could get this profession early as children, to get test to mathematics and to engineering, this would help to solve their problems, to get jobs and help companies to find enough qualified people. So I think family can help children to get more education and need to develop educational games and everything that help to children to get interest to mathematics and engineering.
It is important to give role models to young people so they can relate it to, like they can recognize that's me or that can be. Then we will make sure in the ways in our system and culture that they will not have predispositions to direct people with disability away from the same careers and towards social service careers.
Raphael, I know that you've been involved with Point of Lights. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? That would be a good way to get them involved.
It's a wonderful, really volunteer organization that allows to provide these signs throughout the community, around the nation. For example, I went to my city in Atlanta as well to Washington DC down here, and I provided all the DC classroom about science to all under development, under privileged school, especially in elementary school, and I try to inspire all the kids about science and one of them to embrace education and career in science based on their success for their abilities.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Entry Point, how it works, how kids get recruited, what kind of companies you've worked with?
Entry Point, we do recruitment nationally, looking for undergraduate and graduate students who already have determined that they want a career in science or engineering. And in order to make this possible, AAAS has partners. Our very first partner continues is NASA, and IBM have been our strongest partners over many years, but we've also had many other companies. The companies themselves offer the internships, but the students are recruited and screened by entry point at AAAS, and it's students with every kind of disability: vision, hearing, mobility, speech, learning disabilities, and health issues.
Steve, could you
Yes.
tell me about more about your apps for Androids? What are some of the apps you've been working on lately?
Well, before I do that, Virginia mentioned corporations that partner with us in our various capacities, and that is very important to have those partnerships established. And you're asking about apps for Android. There are two companies in particular that have really gone out of their way for us, T-Mobile and Adobe. And because they do what they do to support us, we have an absolute blast going to elementary schools of children with disabilities and working to assess their learning abilities, where their strengths lie, and then putting together applications that help them discover science and math and technology. And these kids go bananas. That's one of the most fun things we do. And
I
getting
wish
them.
they would have had this when my kids were in.
So do I.
John, you've seen a lot of changes since 1949, when you first were trying to find materials to be able to learn science. What do you see as the next frontier?
Huh? I think I'm working on the next frontier.
You're working on the next frontier?
Am I supposed to continue?
If you have something more to say, we'll move on.
My work will make mathematics and tactile graphics more available to all Braille readers.
What do you all see as being, and this is a more generalized question of the same realm, what do you see as being the future impact of STEM on employment, education, and community living?
Well, we all know when the unemployment is high, it's even harder for those with disability. I'll tell you, every month I've received unsolicited contact by up to half a dozen recruiters outside my company when they ask me to see if they can set up a time to talk on the phone. Look, I'm deaf, I can't talk on the phone, but I know they are contacting me because of my ability in STEM, not to fill in a quota. So STEM is an area that where we all know people with disability can often have the greatest change to succeed and contribute in ways unmatched by others. STEM is the area of the most competitive job for the future. This is the most important area to focus on functioning job for those with disability. It is no brainer.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Raphael that STEM is the key to our future. It's never been more of a key than it is today. We've fallen behind a little bit. But with the advanced technologies that is out there that can accommodate the access needs of children with any disability you can imagine, that is the key. That is a real enabler, and it's very exciting to think about the future and providing students with the technology they need to succeed in science, technology, engineering, and math, so we can once again be the greatest country in the world.
Well, Raphael and Steve are right, and it's very important that the students with disabilities and those who are graduating have the skills, because the companies are not going to hire them unless they have the skills that fit into the jobs that are available. And another aspect is mentors. It's critical that students with disabilities have mentors when they are still in school, and particularly when they're interns in the early years of employment, because there's so many different issues in employment that the mentors can assist in their development.
John?
Well, I speak for blind people specifically. A lot of blind people are almost completely dependent on auditory material. I do a lot of email, and I've seen some horrible spelling.
You haven't seen me text, then you would really see some horrible spelling.
You know, one interesting thing, John happens to be deafblind, and he's understanding what we're all saying, and he's able to talk through the use of technology, which is very cool. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
And I suppose that everybody realizes that Raphael and Dimitri are following everything with real-time captioning. The audience can see it posted in back, and they're watching it directly on the screen in front.
Ja. Also, Briefe Francis. Look. Nobody can kiss, but they can. It's a fact. I can't even hear, but as I thought, I can kiss better. I can see more. Our problems are typically, and that is my competitive advantage for my STEM work.
It must have been pretty cool working on a space shuttle. I can only imagine. My mind can't even wrap around the idea of what that even means.
So why can't they provide me a suite?
I would like to add that at IBM Research, this program where people, children, attending, they see how research is working. So they have children from deaf schools. And when children come in and see how researchers work, when they see demonstration of products, they help them to understand what opportunities are in STEM technology, and this encourages them to continue in that direction.
How do you mean? How? I've been good so far.
John, do you want to tell us a little bit about your Braille Blaster, what you're working on now?
Well, Braille Blaster is a graphical user interface intended for transcribers and people with a lot of technical expertise. It will produce both mathematics and tactile graphics. It relies on right? We have an online community of support, especially one person in China who turned out to be a very good programmer, better than me, in fact. I'm also working on other braille transcription software. Some of you may have heard of the Disabilities software. I'm the lead developer on that project. So the goal of the Disabilities software is to provide a complete braille engine. I like to say that Braille Blaster is the rest of the car. The engine can be used in other cars, but Braille Blaster is the car right now.
Okay, open up the questions to the floor. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask for the panel?
We're too smart for you, huh?
This is more of a comment than a question. I wonder if the panel would agree that some of the barriers to getting young people with disabilities into STEM are the same as the barriers for getting any kid into STEM in one sense in particular, and that is that science is often viewed as all about tiny things and huge things in white lab coats, when in fact it's pervasive. It's about the most practical, get under the car kind of stuff that you can imagine. And I wonder whether it's important to emphasize that for kids with disabilities as well as everyone else.
What do y'all think?
I think that for people with disabilities, there are higher barriers to get into science by obvious reason, but need to emphasize for people with disability that they have different skills because they need every day solve difficult problems. Therefore, they develop a lot of creativity, a lot of things that people with normal abilities have not yet developed. And therefore, companies who start to hire, they need to focus on their abilities rather than disabilities. If the companies to focus on their abilities, they'll be rewarded. They'll get much more than they could get from people with normal abilities.
If we want a kid with deaf in a wheelchair or blind to believe they can be a scientist, we need to so they for sure can be scientists and make sure there are no actual or other obstacles in the ways for them to succeed for their ability.
The important thing to remember is that people with disabilities are all problem solvers, from getting out of bed in the morning to work, to get around town, and to go to school and to learn. And as Dimitri said, these problem-solving abilities also have a lot of creativity, which can be a contribution to the employers and to the business.
I think his question really was, are the barriers the same? And that, I guess, would one of you like to address that part of it?
Well, when I think of science, technology, engineering, and math, I think of science and chemistry sets and kids just being drawn to that, and technology. Who doesn't have a computer game? And engineering, robotic competitions. It's math. I believe it's math that really provides or puts up barriers for a lot of kids. And I think there are solutions to that and approaching teaching math in different ways, using different senses and different tools. That is the way to creatively engage students in math so they look at it the same way as they do science, technology, and engineering.
Interesting. Nothing?
I think there's still attitudinal barriers. I mean, we have to realize that. But I think as each individual proves himself or herself, that the attitudinal barriers become less.
I've a good example. I gave the crossing to my company here a few years back. I told him there was a TV show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
They give you crosses that go from easy to hard. The first crossing I got was finish the nursery rhyme. Mary had a little blank question mark. I had no idea. I never heard the nursery rhyme. But my wife told me it was lamp. Okay. That got me to the $1 question. And they asked him how many people ever stepped foot on the moon. He was stumped. He called out of his friend. And they had no idea. Opportunity by the TV read the question and said, oh, that's really easy question. The engine is off. My wife said, how did you know? Because you went to NASA and my wife said, oh. And I said, no, my dear. Do you think it's safe for anyone to step foot on the moon alone? It's the only even number, not hard number. So I told my CEO the question to ask himself is, do you desire to have wiki for you? Every one person out of every 100. The answer to the $1 million question is as obvious to the nursery rhyme was to the other 99.
Different folks for different boats for different folks, apparently. Okay, any other questions from the audience? In the back.
Yeah, I have this is about the dearth of ingenious mathematicians out there, which I think was accurate. Kids actually start excited about math, in my experience, regardless of their ability. It's not taught in an ingenious manner, an inspiring manner, a gateway to science. And then when you fold on being creative about capturing the abilities and the different learning approaches that are going to be so valuable, how does one get that skill set and that asset in front of every kid?
I actually think that some problems why children sometimes do not want to become mathematician, because I'm a mathematician and I have children, 3 sons. None of them became mathematicians, no matter how I tried. They went to medicine, but all movies shows great mathematicians as crazy people. So when I told my children, let's become mathematicians, they thought, no, I don't want to be crazy. So I think we need better publicity about mathematicians, about their abilities in some forms.
Anybody else? Over here?
Jacobs, I believe, or anyone else who develops software. Not a question, a comment. Please consider companies like Spiritech and other startups that are harnessing the powers of autism to do QA work. Software testing is one field where autism can be a competitive advantage, and we're out there looking for client companies. So I just want to bring that to the awareness of people like Mr. Jacobs.
There is one company, I don't remember where it is. It's in Europe. It may be Netherlands? Denmark, that only hires employees with autism spectrum disorder. And it's wonderful. It was the most unique business model I ever read about, and I wish I could remember the name of the company.
Listerna, and we were modeled after it in Chicago. We're called
Special Listerna?
Yeah, but you don't have to go to Denmark. Come to Chicago.
We will have to talk.
Anybody else back there? Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, just Steve Noble, and I'd just like to make an observation and a question to challenge individuals. I know John Boyer mentioned how that in the 1940s he had such a difficult time finding the materials he needed in higher mathematics and science areas in Braille. 60 years later, this is still a major issue, and getting STEM content in Braille, and not just only in Braille, but in an accessible format that students that are using synthetic speech technology, for instance. There is an open source code called Mathematical Markup Language, which is, it's a W3C standard. And the problem is getting people to adopt this universal design for mathematic content in digital form. And I know many people in this room are trying to push that envelope and move that along, but it still is a real difficult problem, especially in the mainstream, because I mean, you can look at the point that the internet browser with the largest market share in the U.S. Will not natively support mathematical markup language. There is a plugin, but there's question whether that plugin will even work in the future with updates. I'm not going to name the vendor, but that creates the browser. You all probably use it every day, but so and how do I get their attention? Because I talk to people in these big corporate places, and they're really not interested in math. They're not interested in STEM content, and I just wish there was some way of getting their attention. And I do very much appreciate what John Boyer's research is doing, and the fact that his technology is going to help make available more mathematical content, especially in Braille, because it does work with mathematical markup language. So I do applaud the work of John Boyer. So I don't know if anybody has any observations on that.
Over here?
I just wanted to go back. My name is Denise Carson. I wanted to speak about promoting math and science in education. And I think probably if we promote it well in education, we will have a better chance of reaching corporate America. My daughter is with me today, and I invited her to join me because she's in the math and science program in Chesterfield County in the state of Virginia. And I just asked her, what is it that excites you about math and science? And she said that they're allowed to do project work. They're allowed to apply math and science to their lives. And I just fear that often in school systems, children are taught rote math skills and rote learning skills with math and science and don't get the chance to enjoy it as all of you have, and for the fun, vibrant, higher level thinking experiments that math and science can be. So if we could promote more of that nationally with young children, early childhood age children, up through corporate America, we probably would go much farther as a nation.
Would your daughter like to say anything about her experience, about what makes her excited directly?
I guess just like, I know in like physics I'm taking right now, and we often like, every week we do a couple labs throughout the week to help show whatever we're studying. And like just doing these labs helps us learn the concepts better than just memorizing what the book has told us.
We know that, you know, experiential learning is the best way to learn virtually anything. So I'm not sure why we decided to teach math in a different way. Those of you who are teachers might have that answer. Yes?
I think we have time for just one more question, and then we'll have to move on.
Hi, my name is Carrie Sapalo, and I have a question about hands-on science learning experiences. It's more of a comment, I guess. With schools having budgetary cutbacks in this day and age, and schools are going to more online, virtual science learning laboratory experiences as opposed to physical hands-on experiences. And when you go to that virtual platform, you take the hands-on component away from a student with a disability. And it's something that I have a deep concern for, but I don't really know the solution to this problem. And I just wanted to mention it and throw it out there if any panelists had any comments.
Hey, Kerry, why don't we do it? It's a great question, but the education panel is next, and so I think that's probably best addressed with the education panel for our next panel. So, Rhonda, can we wrap up here?
All right, I'd like to thank everybody, thank our panel.
So we're going to have, really appreciate the panelists. We're going to have our next panel walk up and make this little transition. So if we could have Catherine, Sarah, can you all help people make the transition?
You mean the whole thing is over?
Hey, John, you want to go down and sit in the audience down there?
What else is supposed to be going on?
Yes, what else is going to happen after the second panel?
Nothing, just closing speeches.
What is the panel about?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll short one chair. Hold on. What is it that you said? There's a chair right in front of you. There you go. Your tent out.
All right, so we're making a final transition here. One thing I did want to do is, as we get ready for our second panel here, one thing I did want to do is, you know, many of you all who are in the audience either nominated somebody or you yourself were nominated, and we have so many great folks who are doing great things in STEM in our team here, the Department of Education, Department of Labor, and I, and the rest of our team here had a really difficult time narrowing it down. So you had great nominees, some of the people who spoke, Steve Noble, Carrie Sapello, Marco Carbono here, you know, Howard from the National Association of Deaf. COPAA, Denise Powers Group, and so many others of you all were nominated or nominated somebody working in the STEM field. And so all of you all are to be congratulated for the work you're doing. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me nominate 80 people, so we had to narrow it down somehow. But all of you all to be congratulated, and I hope that you all will continue to do the work. And we want to know what you're doing. I want to continue to know what you're doing in STEM because I really want to try to make some progress in this area for the president and for this administration. So we want to stay in touch with you. We want to know what you're doing. So please definitely keep us up to date on what you're doing in STEM and interesting new things. So congratulations to all of you all. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our second panel, who is going to be hosted by Alexa Posney. Alexa is our Assistant Secretary for the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, and Alexa worked with the entire team at OSERS, her deputy, Sue Swinson, Melody Musgrove, the deputy of OSEP, and Charlie Lakin, who is the head of NIDER. So the entire team at OSERS is to be congratulated, and Alexa's going to do the second panel. So Alexa, I'm turning it over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Kareem. And that's okay, you can save that for later. First of all, I'd just like to thank Kareem for giving everyone the opportunity to be recognized. What a great opportunity. And to the Office of Public Engagement, my thanks also goes out to the Department of Labor and how we all partnered together to make sure that, you know, we're recognizing what's so critically important. When I thought about, you know, being here today and why all of you are being recognized, you're being recognized for doing extraordinary things in your communities, in your lives. And the way I looked at it is you are out innovating, out educating, and out building the rest of the world, and we need to use you as exemplars for what we can do. Today we consider the importance of what each of you have done, your thoughts on how things can continue to be improved, and the next steps to ensure the continuous progress that we're looking for. How I'd like to start today is I'd like to begin by asking each of you a very specific question. I want you to know I read all of your blogs, I read all of your bios, so that's the inside info that I had. So Nazrin, I'd like to start with you, if you don't mind. Your work with cardiac patients is very impressive, and we know that prevention is critically important towards helping others remain healthy. So as I read your bio and I read your blog, I noted how your experiences influence not only your own accomplishments, but help you drive your education for others in the STEM areas. You're also a second language learner, so you had some other, what should I say, trials and tribulations as well. So keeping that in mind, what do you suggest we do to advance educational opportunities for people in the STEM field, not only to ensure that they have an equal opportunity, but to try their best? It's basically, how do we inspire others to be like you?
Well, I first would like to start by saying the day I immigrated to the United States, if somebody would have told me, okay, you're going to be successful in STEM and be honored in White House one day, I would definitely have passed out. And it's just such an amazing time for me to be here and an exceptional moment. Well, I started my school as a social work. I wanted to become a social worker, and I said I want to make changes in people's lives, and that's a great field. And then I started taking science classes. Well, I had difficulties, challenges, and I realized no matter who you are, challenges exist. Whether you have a disability or English was my second language, so I had to start learning English. I didn't know anything when I came here. So challenges exist, but you have to find a way to go around barriers, and you have to overcome. And I think that's what I realized when I started taking science classes. Very challenging, very difficult, but people around me showed me that it's possible. Something that I thought it was impossible when I started thinking about social work major. And a lot of it comes from you. A lot of it comes from you seeing the abilities, seeing what are your abilities before you even think about your disabilities. Think about what can you do. before thinking about what you can't do, and show people that, okay, I can do all of these, but I can't do these few things. So are you gonna take me? And I'm sure the answer is yes. Don't tell them, okay, this is my disability. No, show your abilities, and that's what I did. People around me really inspired me, and I hope I answered your question. Sorry if I talked too much. I'm just so excited.
No, thank you very much. No, you are an inspiration to us, believe me. Maria, to go along with that, I noticed that you have also focused on prevention, particularly in the areas of mental health and substance abuse and so forth. And I applaud you for your work in creating pathways for women to have success in the STEM areas. In your blog, you said this, that we can all play a part in breaking down barriers, develop opportunities to help our nation win the future, and ensure that no students who have the intellect, talent, and passion to pursue the sciences will be prevented from realizing their dreams. What types of things can you suggest for us and for everyone else for helping to become facilitators rather than barriers to help others realize their dreams?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me as a champion of change at the White House. In the past, I've wanted to be at the table to discuss these matters, and not only was I not at the table, I wasn't even in the room, and I think that that's a common experience for many people with disabilities, so thank you. There are a number of things that we can do to enhance access to STEM, particularly for women with disabilities. First of all, we need to understand what the barriers are. They could be in a number of areas. They could be in regard to access to technology. Are programs, statistical programs, for example, accessible to women with disabilities or people with disabilities in general? What about the attitudes of teachers, guidance counselors, college admissions personnel, college professors, members of the community? If we experience attitudes as people with disabilities that are negative, that creates large barriers for us. For example, in my case, as a graduate student with disabilities in the 80s, I was told after my first year of graduate school that I could only expect to do only 95% of what my sighted classmates can do.
Wow.
That's another area. And then in addition to that, we have social barriers and educational barriers. So through the project that I'm working on, led by the American Psychological Association, we are trying to survey grantees from the U.S. Department of Education and individuals who work in STEM with women with disabilities to understand what are the barriers, what are the facilitators, and respond to those accordingly.
That's great. Expectations do play an incredible part in it, doesn't it? And so with that in mind, Christine, you work with the Museum of Science, and we had a chance to chat before this because I'm very much a hands-on learner. And you've created an environment that's not only accessible, but also engaging. And that's what, a member of the audience, and you were talking about it. Talking about how we have to spark an interest in science and other subject areas, we have to make people want to be interested in it. So you focus on the fact that individuals with disabilities are frequently told that science is not for them. Okay, and I noticed that you specifically embraced a universal design philosophy, and we talked about the organizational conditions that really encourage inclusion. What are some of the things that you believe can be done to reduce the barriers and foster success for inclusion on a much more global basis?
Well, I think on a much more global basis, I think science museums are really a place where we can start to engage all members of our community in science. I mean, the goal of science museums is to really make science as accessible and fun and inviting for anyone. One of the great parts of my job is I get to travel to science museums across the country. And one of the key characteristics every time I visit a science museum is the excitement of young children as they're walking into a museum. Just think about the fact that these kids are going to learn about science and they're jumping up and down with excitement. And museums can be, because particularly science museums are hands-on, they're multisensory, they can really be a great way to engage children of all abilities and disabilities in STEM. And we've seen that happen. We've seen children who feel disabled in another environment suddenly feel very able when we provide them with audio and text and multisensory ways of learning. What's unfortunate is that too often simple steps aren't taken. And because people are so locked in a traditional way of designing, they think that the only way to help people understand the directions of an interactive hands-on exhibit is to give them a text label. And yet text is so inaccessible to so many learners. And so we really have to break down the barriers of what does it mean to do kind of a normal style of design. And if we do this, I really think that science museums can be a great place to bring in all learners.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I know now would be a time when, if David Rose was here, his whole basis is the universal design for learning, which I think is a great part of it. If we do this up front, we don't have to retrofit it afterwards. George, you're probably a great example of how you don't retrofit. You plan ahead. I mean, you have provided access in so many different ways, especially for those with print disabilities. And your work in creating DAISY, the Digital Accessible Information System, has allowed those with print disabilities access to resources that once upon a time would have been almost totally unavailable. Now, I know that you spend a lot of time developing it in terms of reading, and I know your interest right now is absolutely to move into the math areas. You also helped serve and contributed to the document created by the AIM Commission, which is Accessible Instructional Materials for Post-Secondary Education, which is incredibly important, and that all people will have it just in time, not when we get around to it. What's next on your horizon in terms of accessibility? What other suggestions do you have for increasing accessibility, both in general and for those with print disabilities?
So on the instructional materials field, what most of us grew up with was printed textbooks and printed materials, and we know and love those things. But the computer is changing everything, absolutely everything. We know that the computer can take text and present it to people with synthetic speech. We know that computers can reflect that line with refreshable braille, and we can change the fonts and background colors so people with low vision can see it. So the computer is at the heart of making a transformation of information to something that's not accessible to something that's fully accessible in a multimodal format to everybody. So the next horizon is with mainstream digital publishing. And the EPUB standard that was passed last year, the EPUB 3, it's being integrated into reading systems right now, all of the ones that you're hearing about, and it's on your Christmas list for this coming year. Everybody needs to be focusing on educational materials that will work effectively on all of these devices and be fully accessible. So I see the transition of the traditional educational materials into form that can be used by everybody at the same time. And there's a lot of creative things that we're going to have to be thinking about, because we're not just taking that print book and moving it onto a computer. It's going to be completely different. It's going to have video, interactivity, animations, experiments that you could control through the interactivity, all kinds of things that we haven't even imagined yet. And though these things can be accessible to people with disabilities, we've got a lot of things to figure out, but the biggest thing is the fundamental commitment to do it.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. That, and just what I want to do is harness all of the, all of the intellect and everything that we have here with everyone who is one to be able to go into the next generation. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And I applaud each and every one of you. My mind doesn't work that way. Henry, I just want to say congratulations, and we had the opportunity to meet, probably just a couple months ago. Your drive and determination has allowed you not only to be successful in a very difficult field, but you have absolutely helped pave the way for others to pursue learning in STEM areas. Remember when we talked before that you mentioned about the fact that you were in fields that are very print heavy, but you had the encouragement and you had people who went out of their way to make sure that you were provided with the resources and supports that you needed. How can we encourage others to provide the supports needed to bring fields once thought of as being too visual to become a way of life? Can you share with us your wisdom?
Well, thank you very much, Alexei, and thank you to the entire White House Champion of Change program for inviting me here. It's a tremendous honor, and it's a really wonderful experience. What I aim to do as someone who's studying chemistry at the University of California, Davis, is to really inspire others as a teacher to study chemistry. And you're right, it's a print-heavy field, and organic chemistry is a very visual subject and a very spatial subject. I think one of the most important things that we can do as disability educators and STEM educators of persons with disabilities and of persons without disabilities is to show them that these fields are something that if you put enough time into and enough hard work into, you can accomplish without much trouble. Everything is doable. And that is what we're aiming to do with the chemistry camp that I've started, that we just had our second annual one, and yesterday afternoon, actually, up in Napa, California, where we bring blind high school students in, this time from around the country, and show them organic chemistry and show them how I like to show people how I think about chemistry and allow them to problem solve and do that themselves. I would like to also say that one of the main things that I think we need to do as educators to increase sort of the understanding of what persons with disabilities can do is not just to focus on the disabled community, but to focus on the non-disabled community and show those people that it is not the end of the world to have a disability. I host a wine tasting in the dark in Napa, in Geyserville, California. And one of the great things about that is that we can show people, sighted people come into that, and they learn from start to finish that wine is an art, just like anything else, and that art, no matter what it is, can be enjoyed without vision, and that you don't have to have all your senses and all your abilities to enjoy life and to learn to the fullest extent.
That's great, and what a great venue within which to experiment.
Yeah.
Sounds like my kind of day. That's great. Thank you. And Sina, I just want to talk to you about, and I don't know if you call it the TIKISI,
Tikisi.
That's what I thought, the touch it, key it, speak it. And what you developed is something that provides access to graphical information without the use of vision. Now that is an art in and of itself. So but you mentioned in your blog that you can't wait to open up another visual domain and to make it accessible, that it allows free exploration and access. What area or areas do you think this might be specifically in relationship to STEM? Or if you have other ideas, we'd like to hear about that too.
Well, first off, thank you so much to the Champions of Change program for having me here. It's a tremendous honor. It's been a great experience. So with Tikisi, what our goal is to remove the necessity of, I think it was said a little bit earlier by you actually, when we have time. And so let's get that access immediately when presented with the graphical information, not 5 days from now or whatnot. And so first we tackled maps, and I was getting tired of hearing blank, when in opening up Google Maps. So let's make that happen. Yeah. And then what we just actually submitted was flowcharts. So flowcharts are really, charts of all sorts, really. Diagrams are a big deal in education. It was really interesting because when doing the research for it, I was reading some papers, and in the papers, in flowchart papers, they think they're being really clever. They use flowcharts to describe what their research is, and so and those were inaccessible, right? Of course, I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a system that could make that accessible? So that's what we're focusing on. That's what we just completed. Next, we'd like to move on to the other areas of STEM. When you look at STEM, you see bar charts, you see other kinds of graphs. And the holy grail, of course, is images, is photography. It's maybe not necessarily a bird on a branch overlooking a bluff. We'll get there. But I'd be happy with there's a person in a car, or things along those lines. So I think that the logical progression is we're going to move from diagrams to charts to graphs, computer science graphs or graphs from algebra, and then eventually into images. And what's really exciting is being able to take advantage of cutting-edge research in computer science, but then opening up different researchers' minds and perspectives to, by the way, did you know that your really awesome, great computer vision algorithm could be used to open up the world of images to blind people? I think that's a really exciting part of what I do.
Okay, oh, that sounds great. That kind of leads me into the next question that I really want to open up for all of you, and weigh in if you want to, and don't feel like you have to respond. But it's getting at something that the previous panel mentioned as well, and partly what several of you have talked about. How can we encourage others, and I'm talking about teachers and employers and professors and so forth, to really think ahead and to think up front about what needs to be done, so that all the supports that are needed to bring fields of such as being too visual to really become a way of life? How do we begin to change basically the world? So I just opened it up to anyone.
Should I start?
Go ahead, Stina.
So how can we open it up to anybody in the world, basically,
right.
to encourage people to get into STEM?
Correct.
So I think with a lot of, as is the case with a lot of things, they say learning begins at home, and I think that's really important. My parents spent countless hours describing models and diagrams, making, just using pencils and paper and rubber bands to model different things in geometry, and that's just so key. And then when you get into the education field, when you start taking classes, you start realizing that there's this barrier to accessing those kinds of information. So like what we're trying to do at NC State is reduce that barrier. But how can you encourage people to get into STEM? I think there's a couple of ways. One is by example. I hope that by showing people, I'm blind, but computer science isn't hard. It's fine. It's hard for all of the reasons it's hard for somebody who can see, but let's start removing the barriers if you can't. There are workarounds, excuse me. But then the other ways we can encourage it, I think, is by changing perception. One of the things I've noticed at our campus is there's this conception that the difficulty is not one that is able to be overcome. Therefore, there's just not the number of people with disabilities interested in doing whatever it is. So, for example, interested in doing chemistry or interested in doing computer science. And so, we should need to make that accessible. There just won't be anybody who does that. And so, I think that by showing that opportunity exists and that it's able, the example I give a lot to people is, so programming in a variety of programming languages and doing computer vision algorithms and all this stuff I can do, but sometimes it's extremely difficult to know where to throw away your cup at Starbucks. And it's a practical thing where so other people are complaining about some problem, and yet the thing that I might find more difficult is something you take for granted. So I think that if you raise awareness, then all of a sudden what's been really great to see at North Carolina State is you start seeing sighted colleagues and other colleagues with different disabilities becoming advocates for the field in general, and that's really great because then all of a sudden it goes viral, and I think that's really great.
That's great. Thank you very much. Christine, I noticed you were raising your head. Yeah, feel free. That was a very great comment. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm actually conducting a study right now within science museums looking at what are the conditions that foster change to be more inclusive and what are the barriers that hold institutions back. And what's really encouraging is when institutions are able to take action, most often it's because they started working with people with disabilities in meaningful ways. And so just that initial contact, learning about, George and I were just talking about the iPhone and how accessible that is for people who are blind. Learning about that, it all of a sudden starts to open up science museum professionals' eyes about what people with disabilities can do, and it starts to break down their conceptions. And so really it's beholden on a lot of us to try to figure out ways to start getting our colleagues to work with people with disabilities, and which starts to change their conceptions. Another piece that certainly works a long way is having internal champions within organizations, as well as external champions. I'm finding that in many of the science museums, they have people in their community who are coming to them and asking for change, and that really goes a long way. And for me, I started serving now as an external champion to many other science museums, trying to help them to push forward. But I think the critical piece is that as a society, we have to change our conceptions of what it means to design something in a normal way. There are too many standards that we take as givens without reconceptualizing those standards. And so my mentor, Betty Davidson, one of the things she did at the Museum of Science over 20 years ago is she broke down the traditional conception of a diorama. Many of you know at natural history museums, they have those glass cases that have the taxidermied animals stuffed inside. And what she realized is that there are many of the animals that were in our dioramas were often roadkill. They were animals of New England. And so we could get I know, innovation in amazing places. But we could get a plethora of these animals. And so we didn't have to worry about preserving them. We could just taxidermy these animals and replace them out. And so now we have black bears and beavers and deer antlers, and they're all out there for people to touch. And that's become a standard. You see that in a lot of science museums these days, and they don't even know why that was originally created. So it's being innovative in terms of what we think of as standard.
I am never going to think about roadkill again in the same way. George, go ahead.
So when I was teaching long time ago, I used some of the audiobooks I was just starting to use with my class and had them read and listen at the same time. And their interest and reading levels just soared with that multimodal input. And with the new technology, I think you're going to find that more people, other than people with disabilities, are going to start to use the tools and techniques that are included, maybe put in there for people with disabilities, but I think a lot more people would like to use it, will enjoy using it. Descriptions of diagrams, for example, is something that I think people are going to see. I had a person say, boy, I wish I had a physicist describing that picture to me, and as the books from Learning Ally are done, and been doing for years, it's great to have that expert describing it to you. Well, holy cow, everybody could read that description and benefit from it, and see, actually see more about how people with disabilities are using the new technology, because mainstream people are going to be using it too.
To springboard off of what George said really quick, you'd be amazed how many times I've heard the comment, man, I could use that in my car, or I could, and that's just so key, because once people start seeing that, all of a sudden, what I'm hoping it does is encourages on the industry side, companies to incorporate universal design at the beginning step of the design phase, as opposed to a retrofitting.
I agree. Maria, did you want to say
Yes.
something?
Yes. For women with disabilities, and I would say it would generalize really to all people with disabilities in STEM, I believe that mentoring is very important. There are relatively few people with disabilities in the STEM disciplines as compared to those without disabilities. But the mentors don't necessarily have to be people with disabilities. I think it's great if we stepped up and served as mentors, particularly for those with similar disabilities as ours. I know as a graduate student, I was immensely assisted by a psychologist with a disability who taught me how to perform psychological tests and work with statistics and that kind of thing. But one thing that has been immensely helpful for me is to have a woman scientist who's a nationally known researcher in my field say, you can do this, and let me be your mentor. And in fact, that has spurred me on now to complete a career development grant under NIH that is specifically designed to address disparities that I experienced as a grad student. So I think mentoring is critical. And also role modeling, to have those of us out there who are doing work in STEM for people with disabilities. Many times when we look at STEM, we don't see our faces. We see different faces. So I think it's great, and I applaud the Champions of Change program for drawing light on this very important issue.
Thank you, Maria. And yeah, I'd like to come back to the mentor, but Henry, I know you had.
Yeah, my answer to the question is twofold, and first relies on mentoring from both people with the disability that you have and non-disabled people. For instance, I would never have gone to graduate school in chemistry, let alone undergraduate school in chemistry, and I definitely would not have put together the chemistry camp for blind high school students if it weren't for the support that I gained through from the National Federation of the Blind and their Science Academy, where I observed NASA scientists who were blind working in their professional fields, solving math problems, solving problems of how's this rocket going to get to the moon. Mm-hmm. And I was just a junior in high school. Seeing that told me, yeah, you can do this. This is okay. You can think about science. It was also for mentoring from professors in graduate school, like Dean Tantillo, who I'm currently working with at the University of California, Davis, saying, we have the confidence in blind people. We understand that they can do these things. The second part of my answer revolves around problem solving, which was mentioned by Virginia in the first panel. I think people with disabilities need to be told that they do have somewhat of an innovative way of thinking about problems. I am very good at relating things spatially in my head.
Sure.
I've always sort of wondered, why do I like organic chemistry? Why does this very visual subject make sense? And I realized, well, I've been blind since birth. I've been visualizing things since day one, the layout of streets on my campus, how things work. And when you take the distances and reduce them down so a meter becomes an angstrom, walking around the streets on the UC Davis campus and learning how to get from one coffee shop to the chemistry building isn't really that different than thinking about a complex reaction mechanism, adding a chlorine to a benzene ring, for instance. It's the same mental visualization process. And my feeling is that we need to convince people of this as educators, that if someone wants to study physics, study cosmology, make that meter 500 light years. The image is the same. The visualization is the same. This is why I believe blind people should be doing sciences.
Oh, absolutely. That was great. Okay, coming back to, several of you have mentioned it, and you've talked about people who have made such an important difference in your life, whether it's a mentor or whether it's your parents or the encouragement or whatever else. But I also looked at each one of your stories and what a unique story each and every one of you have to tell. And what I want to know is, what was it that inspired you to take your personal experiences, and if it hasn't, I want to encourage you to do that, and use them to encourage and inspire others and be the mentor for someone else. Would anyone like to comment on that? You guys are role models. Go ahead,
I guess
Henry.
I'll start. The people who truly inspired me and pushed me in the direction that I needed to go to help other Americans get employment and become educated in STEM fields were certainly the National Federation of the Blind and the UC Davis Chemistry Department, in particular my professor Dean Tantillo, and my wonderful assistant, who's basically an orientation and mobility specialist for organic chemistry, Sarah Cohen, who's been a hugely valuable resource. She's brilliant herself and has just been hugely valuable to my education over the past 6 years. And I think what we need to do as STEM educators and as people who have a desire to pull Americans with disabilities into our field of study is think about how we were mentored and how we can explain to society at large why it makes sense for people with disabilities or who have different ways of thinking about things. I think that's the way I like to think about a disability, to pursue fields in the STEM disciplines. And I plan to, and I say this with conviction, use everything I've learned and continue. This is just the beginning of how I want to really help people gain confidence in themselves.
You're a great role model. Would anyone else like to comment? Go ahead, Nazrin.
I would like to say I was truly inspired when I first took my first biochemistry class in University of North Texas, Dr. Purtle. It was so, I felt so special when he spoke to me and said, I can see, at that time I was still social work. I still was trying to convince myself if science is really what I wanted to do. And I never forget the words that he told me. And he said, I am sure that you can do this. And this is where my science life started. And my major professor, Dr. Douglas Root, that's working with me, University of North Texas, all of these people, ODA Office of University of North Texas, all of these people that believed in me and allowed me to really demonstrate myself. They changed my life and taught me that I should be a mentor and I should do this mission and change other people's lives. And definitely serving as a role model, which I think I started doing that by being a tutor in STEM field, and that allowed me to share my experiences with others and demonstrate to them that you can do this and just I know it takes more effort, but that's special about it. Something that you earn easily is really not, doesn't have any value to you. And we have this feeling that since we are working so hard for something, this is even more special to us. So I want to appreciate all of those that really believed in me, and I want to give the turn to the next person.
Thank you.
I had a similar.
Sina, go ahead.
I had a similar experience. Obviously at home and everything, the families is just really key in terms of encouraging you, because basically I was never given the impression that anything was not possible. So that's one of the situations in which ignorance is absolutely bliss, because then you just simply assume that you can do anything. But I had a chemistry professor. Chemistry is getting a really good showing today. I had a chemistry professor.
About time.
There you go. Lori Petrovich, and I will always remember her. She. After class, I'd go to class and we talk about the subject matter. And after class, I was an undergraduate then, and we would go to her office, and she would bring in like stones from her garden, and like these would be electrons. These are the orbitals, wax sticks, whatever. And this is a chemistry professor. This isn't a teacher of the visually impaired. This isn't somebody whose job it is really. And there's above and beyond, and then there's that. And so that's just really key. And that to me, with a lot of other examples, showed me that what it really means to be an educator, or what it really means to be a teacher, because it's not going and giving a lecture and having a really good presentation, but it's actually really caring, like sincerely needing for your students or whomever you're working to truly get that understanding, that light bulb moment, and that appreciation of the material. And then you asked a really good question about how can we serve as examples, and how can we encourage others to do this? One of the things that I see a lot online is there's a lot of young people who will come on email serves or Twitter or any kind of social network like that, and they'll say, well, I'm a blind 8th grader, or I'm a vision impaired high school student, I'm interested in doing this, this, and this, but someone's told me that's really visual, or someone's told me that's really math oriented. And what I really try to do, and I hope to do even more of this, is other folks like my colleagues will sometimes give me a hard time about this because we might have a deadline coming up, but I'll pick up the phone and talk to that person and say, look, here's the deal. And this is exactly how you need to, don't worry about it and just try it. And if it doesn't work out, let's talk about it. Maybe, maybe your calling is to be a poet. Maybe your calling is to be whatever it is that you want to be great at and whatever contribution you want to make. But don't let your, whatever disability it is, dictate that decision. Let it be controlled by what your passions are. So I think that's a really good deal.
That's great advice. Would anyone else like to comment? Go ahead, Christine.
I come at mentoring from a little bit of a different standpoint, which is that I view the mentoring about mentoring future advocates and not just kind of future scientists. And so I've been working on that certainly within my own department, but also across the museum field. One of the things I think that's hard, and I know many of us in this room know it, is that when you're a constant advocate, the work gets really tough. And I always feel like you need to just push that little bit. If you don't push, then we don't move forward. And so I've been trying to play a role with really helping and supporting advocates across the field. And certainly Betty Siegel's here, her work, bringing together museum people, and particularly in the arts, bringing advocates together. Those types of support groups are really valuable. And so those of you out there who are advocates and you find that work tough, find a mentor. And also those of you who've been successful, try to find people to mentor, because it's only by collective action that we can really move forward.
Great. Maria, would you like to comment?
Sure. In terms of mentoring, I think of it a little more broadly. Certainly, mentoring is something that I enjoy doing, and I do as much as I can. But I think looking at it beyond mentoring of the students with disabilities might be helpful. And that is, what I mean by that is, I think it's important for us to mentor more broadly those that educate students with disabilities, those that are in charge of accrediting institutions of higher education and institutions that admit students with disabilities, so that there would be more of an opportunity for students with disabilities to be recruited to higher education and graduate school, to be supported and retained. Because I believe that sometimes people really do, in their hearts, want to mentor and they want to help, but they don't quite know how. And to let people know who are in positions of authority, who are in positions that can help us as individuals with disabilities in STEM, it's okay for you not to know everything. And for us to be able to educate those people that it is possible. I think we can really move mountains that way.
I agree. Very sage advice.
Turn that frustration into positive energy, because I think sometimes people with disabilities get frustrated when folks who want to help just don't know how. And it's really hard to do sometimes, because you want to concentrate on the problem and instead you're spending an inordinate amount of time just getting access to things. But if you can turn that energy into really taking the time and allowing them to know how to best help anybody with that same need, you've done a lot of work.
Oh, that's great. Okay, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I would like to open it up to, are there any questions from the audience for this very esteemed group? Yes.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment. I guess last weekend I was at an event, and I was really surprised to see there were children in the museum there. Well, it was like a big event. They had a booth that was there, and so there were children at the museum involved with it, and the children were all involved with everything. They were interacting with each other, the adults as well. And so, come to think of it, I was just thinking, I've never had that opportunity in my own time, or in my own childhood. I never saw that before. You know, I've never went to a deaf camp or anything like that, or ever been, well, it's really been limited with deaf camps. There's limited. It's not the same with deaf and blind, and it's like a limited number of blind people. The funding is different. So there's a lot of work that we need to do to really encourage the children and how to reach out and have access to camps and different resources, or to go to a deaf institute, for instance. I went to a deaf school and I never had anyone come and visit and say or do anything that you're saying. And it's just really interesting, you know, the computer science portion of it. You know, I didn't really get a lot of information until I got into my college about playing around, you know, with games and everything on the internet. And, you know, it's not really, the other students didn't have, they were way ahead of me, I noticed, because I didn't have that opportunity. So I think that there's some things that we need help with. We still have barriers, and we really need to reach out.
Okay, for the people who may be online or viewing this some other way, one of the audience members was talking about the fact that he didn't have access to a lot of these, like the summer camps, or have the access to different methods of being able to access materials and so forth. So any comments from the panelists? And George, let's start with you.
Well, Christine here from the museum side, I think, you know, Christine.
Correct.
The whole idea of universal design in terms of not only the materials and the exhibits, but the programs and the outreach to everybody. I think the focus needs to be in universal design, multimodal, and have access to all kinds of things in different ways, and just make a more inclusive society. And this reaches everywhere in our communities. The whole community needs to be focused more on universal design in every respect.
I agree. Christine?
Yeah, I think so often when we talk about our STEM educational infrastructure, we forget about all the informal science learning experiences, which is what you're talking about with summer camps, that they are such a rich part of how people learn about science and society. One of my first jobs at the Museum of Science, I often call it my break-in period, was running birthday parties. And I had a young girl who came to one of my birthday parties. I had just started working and she was deaf. And I worked all weekend to make sure that there were visuals around, and I also found some deaf volunteers that could help sign and interpret. And what was really powerful for me about that first experience was that young girl had never met an adult who wasn't her doctor who signed before. Wasn't a doctor or family member. And so there's also this opportunity in science museums when we bring in volunteers and we have so many people to interact with the public that we can also provide those opportunities for a person with one disability to learn from another. We also have 2 projects at our museum around ASL and science. One was, and is still probably touring and available, associated with our Star Wars exhibition, which is a virtual American Sign Language tour that went around and traveled. With the exhibition, you can get ASL tour on your handheld device. And we're also working with a group called Turk to deliver science terms through a handheld device in ASL. And one of the key things we're finding is that many parents of deaf children aren't fluent in ASL enough to know the science terms when they go to the Science Museum with their child. And that prevents the family from learning about science together. And so we were very happy when Turk came to us to put that forward, because I think that that's another barrier that we have to think about, is how does that family learn together when the person has a disability?
Okay, yes, I wish I could take more questions. We could be here, you guys are such an esteemed panel. I just, I feel very fortunate to have been there. I just wanted to end by just saying congratulations. Teddy Roosevelt once said, what we need is more people who specialize in the impossible. Not only are all of you specializing it, you are creating pathways for everyone to be successful in STEM fields. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. If you want to just stay here, or just stay for right now. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexa. My name's Kyle Learman. I run the Champions of Change program here in the White House Office of Public Engagement. And I just wanted to stop by. The Director of Public Engagement, John Carson, created this program with our office a little over a year ago now. And we actually had 12 champions who had come in over the last year meet with the President for about an hour 2 weeks ago to talk about the work that they were doing around the country and in their communities. And I just say that to make sure that you all know how important this is, and how important we view putting the White House spotlight on folks who are doing great things around the country. This is a particularly great group to have in today. How many of you have big sisters? If you have a big sister, raise your hand in the crowd. Anyone? That's it? All right. So my big sister works for Brown Goldstein Levy up in Baltimore, and they represent the National Federation of the Blind. So I get to impress my big sister today by telling her that I get to speak with this group, which is exciting as well. But I just want to make sure you all leave. I'm going to give you all an ask that we hope that you'll do when you head out today. We can only do so much here at the White House. We can't get the word out. Our microphone shrinks every day, and we put the spotlight on folks like these champions of change who are doing great things in their communities. But the only way that we can really shine a spotlight on them as much as possible is if all of you go home, tell folks that you were at the White House, that you came, that you're here in the Eisenhower building, that you saw this Champions event. Tell them to watch it online at whitehouse.gov/champions. And make sure that you tweet about it, Facebook about it, and email it around to all your friends and family. But it really is a privilege to be here today. And I just want to say once again, congratulations to all our champions.
All right, thank you, Kyle. So many of you all, everybody who knows me know that one of the things that I always talk about in the work that I do in leading disability policy and outreach for the President is that what makes my job so great and easy is that we have people around the building who I can go to who have a connection to disability, or even if they don't have a connection to disability, they believe in the work that we want to do for the President. And so folks like Kyle has really been a great partner in the Office of Public Engagement and Outreach. I think because of his sister and in that connection, but generally he is just really, really supportive in the work that he does. He's always coming. We sit next door to each other, so he's always coming over and harassing me, and I'm busy trying to work, and he's, Kareem, we need to do this on disability. Kareem, let's do an event here. Let's do this. When Kyle runs our agency outreach with our federal partners, and we do this the roundtables with agencies, and he's always like, who else can we get to do a disability roundtable? So he's very aggressive and very supportive of the work that I do in leading the work for the President. So with that, let me close again by once again saying, on behalf of the President, on behalf of our entire administration, we thank you. We congratulate the Champions of Change. Please keep a lookout. There's going to be a lot of media and press, and these folks have some great companies and institutions that are really pushing out the information. So keep a lookout for that. And as Kyle said, tweet, Facebook, all that stuff about the Champions. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great day.